Hello and welcome to this required risk management training for all new TUSD employees. The following slides will give you a brief overview of the laws and specific practices in place that are designed to provide a safe working environment. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, requires that all new employees are to receive a safety orientation. The following slides will give you a brief overview of general safety procedures. We will cover what to do if you are involved in a TUSD vehicle accident, bloodborne pathogens in the workplace, the Hazard Communication Program under the new Globally Harmonized System, or GHS, school site written emergency management plans, and general responses to emergencies if a student or staff member is hurt or injured. In addition, you will be given the number to call to ask any general safety questions you may have. At TUSD, safety is a priority. Everything revolves around safety. Both the employer and the employee have responsibilities to maintain a safe working environment. The employer, TUSD, must provide a safe workplace environment to conduct daily work activities. The employee must report any unsafe conditions to their supervisor or risk management department. Auto accident reporting. Some jobs may require you to use a TUSD vehicle as part of your normal duties. If you are using a TUSD vehicle and are involved in a vehicle accident, do not leave the scene. Call 911 and wait for police to respond. If the accident happens during normal work hours, be sure to call your supervisor and let them know that you were involved in an accident, and call school safety at 584-7676 to report the accident. Next, we will discuss bloodborne pathogens. Blood can carry viruses such as hepatitis or AIDS. Because of this, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA, has set up a federal workplace standard. This standard is used to help employees protect themselves while at their work site. A bloodborne pathogen is a microorganism that can be transmitted through blood-to-blood contact, such as an open wound or cut. Contact can also be bodily surfaces like eyes, your mouth, or mucous membrane areas. The possibility of exposure to bloodborne pathogens at TUSD is minimal, but can be reduced even further by wearing protective gloves and following standard exposure control practices and universal precautions. A standard exposure control practice can be accomplished through periodic hand washing. The hands should be wet, put some dispensable soap on them, wash vigorously for about 45 seconds, rinse off, and then dry with a paper towel. This should be done before eating, drinking, or feeding, as well as before handling food, kitchen utensils, after toileting, the assisting in toileting, or diapering students. The hand washing should also be done after any contact with bodily fluids, drainage from wounds, mucous membranes, or objects contaminated with any bodily fluids after protective gloves have been removed. A universal precaution is to consider that everyone's bodily fluids are contaminated. Therefore, you would protect yourself from all bodily fluids at all times and use the previously mentioned standard exposure control practice of periodic hand washing precautions. Protecting your skin can be done with the use of barriers. A simple barrier is the use of one-time use only disposable protective gloves. Also, a long-sleeve garment can be a good barrier against scratches, abrasions, or bites. Everyone should practice bloodborne pathogen procedures such as wearing protective gloves, following standard exposure control practices of periodic hand washing, and a universal precaution considering everyone's bodily fluids are potentially contaminated. TUSD recognizes there are some specific job categories that may require additional considerations. For example, exceptional education staff and school monitors should consider wearing long-sleeve garments, which can give some additional protection. Coaching or athletic staff should consider having moisture-resistant windbreakers or jackets available to wear, if needing to attend to an injury or bodily fluid exposure. Athletic staff and transportation staff who transport exceptional education students should consider having a supply of a TUSD-approved disinfectant available to wipe down equipment if contaminated from a bodily fluid exposure. While the risk of exposure to a bloodborne pathogen at TUSD is minimal, there are some job classifications that are considered at a higher risk than others. If you are in any of these categories, you will need to call to schedule your bloodborne pathogen training at 6601. Next we will show the higher risk categories. You will need to call to schedule your bloodborne pathogen training if you are a school nurse, nurse practitioner, practical nurse, health assistant, athletic trainer, a coach, a dental hygienist, campus monitor, plumber, bus driver or bus monitor, substitute teacher, a building engineer, audiologist, occupational therapist or physical therapist, a speech clinician or aide, a ex-ed teacher or ex-ed teacher aide, infant care specialist, or individual certified in CPR as a condition for their employment, or if you are a school safety or field safety person. If you are in any of these categories, you will need to call to schedule your bloodborne pathogen training at 225-6601. If you fall into one of the job categories just mentioned, you must log into True North Logic and schedule an initial face-to-face bloodborne pathogen training with the Risk Management Office. If an accident happens in your area or classroom and bodily fluids are spilled, call a custodial staff member to clean it up. You should not be cleaning bodily fluids yourself. Custodial staff have been trained, have the equipment, and use the approved disinfectants to clean bodily fluids. If you have been exposed to bodily fluids from a bite, treat it as potentially infectious, and the area should be antiseptically cleaned, bandaged, and reported to workers' compensation. If a bodily fluid accident happens during a sporting event and bleeding occurs, play should be stopped and wound must be properly cleaned and bandaged using universal precautions. The person could also be given an absorbent material to apply pressure to the wound until help is available. Blood or bodily fluids should be cleaned up before play is resumed. If you think you have been exposed to bodily fluids, report the on-the-job exposure of bodily fluids to your site administration and to TUSD Workers' Comp. The next subject we will cover is the Hazard Communication Program. Under the new Globally Harmonized System or GHS, all TUSD employees have the right to know about the chemicals they are working with. Keep in mind we are talking about the chemicals that we all use, like desk cleaners or common use chemicals. To facilitate the right to know about the chemicals you are working with, OSHA, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, has set up a federal workplace standard, called the Hazard Communications Standard. This standard explains how employees will know about the chemicals they are using at their work site. At the ending of 2013, OSHA's Hazard Communications Standard became globally harmonized, which means its terminology and symbols match those used around the world. OSHA's Hazard Communications Standard requires that the dangers of hazardous chemicals be communicated to employees in a variety of ways, including safety data sheets, chemical labels, inventory of your chemicals, and the written Hazard Communication Program. As previously stated, OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard became globally harmonized, which changed the format of the safety data sheet. The following slide shows a sample safety data sheet. This is a sample of a globally harmonized or GHS safety data sheet. They start with the product name and manufacturer information, warning pictures or pictograms, a signal warning word or words, and numbered sections. The safety data sheets will be coming from chemical manufacturers and will be in a specific order, so they always will look the same in a user-friendly format. The globally harmonized safety data sheets are standardized and will have 16 sections. The specific order of the 16 sections will always be consistent. The 16 sections will always look the same and be in a user-friendly format. The 16 sections are broken down and explained next. We just mentioned there are a total of 16 sections in a GHS safety data sheet. Sections 1 through 8 are for general information and sections 9 through 16 are for technical information. We will look at each individual section. Let's start with sections 1 through 8. Section 1 of the globally harmonized system has the chemical name and the manufacturer information. Section 2 has the hazards of the chemical. Section 2 also includes the hazard classification of the chemical, the signal word, which is either danger or warning, where danger is used for more severe hazards, a hazard statement which describes the nature of the hazard, and the precautionary statement which describes ways to minimize exposure to the chemical. Section 2 also includes the warning drawings or pictograms. Next we will show what the pictograms look like. The pictograms will always look the same and are easy to understand. Sections 3 through 8 contain the remaining general information about the chemical. As stated before, there are 16 sections in the safety data sheet, We just finished looking over the first 8 sections. Now let's continue with sections 9 through 16 of the safety data sheet. Sections 9 through 16 contain the technical and scientific information about the chemical. Let's look closer at these individual sections. Sections 9 through 16 includes technical and scientific information. This information includes physical and chemical properties, stability and reactivity, toxicology, ecological, disposal information, transportation, also regulatory, and other miscellaneous information about the chemical. We just explained all 16 sections of a safety data sheet. Now let's look at the chemical itself, starting with the chemical container label. OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard also requires the chemical labels be globally harmonized. A chemical label is the labeling that is on the chemical itself. Next we will show an example of a chemical label. This is an example of a globally harmonized chemical label. Globally harmonized chemical labels will always look the same. This consistent user-friendly format will be shown next. Labels don't have all of the information that is on a safety data sheet because of their smaller size. Next we will explain what information these labels on the outside of chemical containers will have. A globally harmonized chemical label shows the chemical name and the manufacturer information. The label will also have the signal word, which is either danger or warning, where danger is used for more severe hazards, a hazard statement which describes the nature of the hazard, and a precautionary statement which describes ways to minimize exposure to the chemical. A globally harmonized chemical label also includes the warning drawings or pictograms. These are the same pictograms that are on globally harmonized safety data sheets. Next we will show what these pictograms look like. The pictograms will always look the same and are easy to understand. The chemical label can be used for quick reference of items like the proper personal protective equipment to be worn while using the chemical. The chemical label can also be used for items like how to store the chemical, first aid, and precautionary information. So far we have talked about manufacturers making their globally harmonized safety data sheets in a standardized way as of 2013, and that they will have 16 sections. We also talked about the 16 sections of a safety data sheet, and that these sheets will always be in the same order and will always be in a consistent user-friendly format. We then talked about manufacturers making the labels on the outside of chemicals that are globally harmonized and standardized. The labels will also look the same and be in a consistent user-friendly format. Now let's look at the chemical itself in the school or shop, starting with employee responsibilities. When you purchase a chemical from a store, a chemical manufacturer, or a distributor, and bring it into the school, or a chemical is put under your care, you as a TUSD employee have certain responsibilities. We will now explain employee responsibilities for overseeing hazardous chemicals in the workplace. As mentioned earlier, at TUSD, safety is a priority. As pertaining to chemical use, employees have the following responsibilities. Employees must write down and maintain a list or inventory of all of the chemicals used in their workplace. Employees must obtain a safety data sheet for each chemical they use and turn it in to the site administrator to be filed in the school's safety data sheet binder normally held at the school office area. Specialty shops like the welding shop, auto shop, transportation, will have safety data sheet binders in their particular classrooms or shop. Employees must also ensure that all chemicals are labeled. When you need a chemical for use in your school, requisition it from your school site. Never bring any chemical from home to your school. Other employee responsibilities include the management of the students if a chemical spill or emergency were to occur, calling 911 if the situation is life-threatening. You must also notify your site administrator and notify your school's site health office person. Have site administration notify your site custodial department for assistance. Making sure to always store all chemicals out of the reach of students. The next topic is emergency management plans. Schools are required by Arizona state law to have a written emergency management plan. The TUSD School Board also requires that each school have a written emergency management plan. Your school's written emergency management plan can be found at your school site, normally in the school office area. Teachers, school admin, and site staff should know their site's emergency management plan procedures for evacuation, reverse evacuation, lockdown, both hard or soft lockdown, shelter in place, and procedures to drop, cover, and roll or hold. Also, teachers, school admin, and site staff should know they are to account for students or staff during one of the aforementioned emergencies. Always remember, if a student or staff member is hurt or injured, call 911 if it is life-threatening. You must also notify your site administrator and notify your school's site health office person. If evacuation is necessary, follow your school site's written emergency management plan for on or off-site evacuations. As previously stated at the beginning of this presentation, at TUSD safety is a priority. Everything revolves around safety. TUSD wants to provide a safe atmosphere for all of our students and employees. To recap this presentation, we have covered general safety procedures. What to do if you are involved in a TUSD vehicle accident, bloodborne pathogens in the workplace, the hazard communication program under the new globally harmonized system. Finally, school site written emergency management plans and general responses to emergencies if a student or staff member is hurt or injured. Thank you, and welcome to TUSD.